Thank you very much, Chair. Just to put things in context, since sort of early May, I have taken 4 flights out of the country and I have returned to the country. I want to put on record the fact that the experience from the worst time to the best time has been much better in Ireland than in other parts of Europe. So I want to put that on record. I also want to put on record the work of the DA. I am absolutely blown away by how quickly you have dealt with the problems and the queues for getting through security. My experience from my first time going through of waiting about 2.5 hours to get through fast track to getting through security. I was absolutely, last Saturday, the 16th of July, I went through fast track in 15 minutes and left myself sitting in the airport for about 3.5 hours as a result of it. So fair play, great job being done. However, and there is always a however, you've really done a great job on security. Cleanliness is absolutely diabolical in every corner of the airport, and you've got to do something about that. Food is also diabolical, and you got to do something about that. I do understand with the massive numbers of people that are arriving early and hanging around the airport that these are challenges for you, and I know that you'll step up to the plate on it, but I do need to put that on record. So the experience in Dublin Airport, it was comparable at the worst of times to that I experienced in London and that I experienced in Germany, in Berlin Airport. So the other thing I want to say to all of you here, the interaction with staff has been amazing. I mean, they have been under huge pressure and I've never been met with anything but good humour and people willing to push themselves the extra bit, both on the ground and in the air. So I compliment all of the people that are involved there. I don't have a huge amount of dealings with baggage staff other than any baggage that I did put in, I did get out, and that's the important thing for me. And I'll deal with that in a couple of minutes. But so DA, I mean, I assume you're going to try and bring in somebody to deal with the cleaning issue and the food issue. I do appreciate they're dealing with very large numbers, but you got to do something there.
We have already augmented the staff and taken a number of measures, particularly in relation to enhanced deep cleaning. You will appreciate that with the volumes of people in each of the areas, particularly airside, and the fact that what previously was an airport that operated not always open, but without people airside for the early hours of the morning, now we have people on the premises at all times. So that has really got in the way of our ability to deliver some of those services, in addition to the resource constraints. Those constraints are being alleviated. They're by no means eliminated, but I believe that having had our intense focus on the security issues, which were a major concern to our ability to just maintain operations, and thank you for your comments in relation to the response to those, we are absolutely turning our energies to each of the areas in which standards are not at the level that we would like them to be.
Thank you. One other point I'd like to make, Terminal 2, I was there on the 30th of June and I was there for a number of hours because I had family going through in different groups. And I observed that in the queues, I think Aer Lingus staff were responsible here. They observed families with young children who were 25 minutes in the queue, and they went over and they took them out of the queue and brought them to get them checked in straight away because they recognised it was difficult to keep children controlled. So, I mean, full compliments for that. However, Aer Lingus, on your baggage, on Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in Terminal 2 for quite some period of time, and during the time I was there, I was observing the notice board on arrivals and how quickly bags were moving, and you would see when when bags got onto the belt, when bags got delivered, and when the flight was closed. And the Malaga flight that arrived at 19:09, the bags were cleared at 20:25. That's almost an hour or thereabouts. Sorry, almost an hour and a half. It's a long time to be hanging around for a bag. Not as long as Mr. Tully and Mr. Maloney's people are waiting for bags, but it is a long time to be hanging around. So just on the missed flights, if I miss a flight, say, to London with Aer Lingus, and the next flight out is full, do they take somebody off that flight and let me in, or must I wait until there's a vacant slot?
Essentially, you're waiting until there's a vacant slot on the flight. So as soon as there's capacity available, we would try and recover the customer.
You'll be waiting a long time, so, because most of your flights are well full these days, from what I can see.
Unfortunately, the effect of the mandated reductions has been that capacity has been further reduced. Yeah.
Okay. Just to get on to the baggage handling, and this applies actually to DAA as well. We went through a two-year period where we had COVID, to deal with COVID, and I believe that out of all the governments in Europe, and I'm not a member of the government party, but I believe the government laid on significant supports for companies in order to retain staff. I don't accept that staff went off and found new jobs or better jobs because there was nowhere to go to get a better job. So I think that your strategy was wrong with respect to laying off people or making people redundant. And I want to ask both DAA, Mr. Tully and Mr. Maloney, would you accept that that strategy was wrong and that in future you need to think more long-term with respect to the retention of staff?
We might start with Mr. Tully and Mr. Maloney, then we'll go to Mr.
Yeah,
House.
sure.
Mr. Tully.
I think given the circumstances at the time, we made the right decisions. Like I said, we didn't enforce any redundancies. We looked to keep everybody on board. But, you know, cargo and logistics is very aligned to our business. That's where a lot of people went to. They went into cargo and logistics because there was a high demand and they were, you know, they could pick up extra hours. We, you know, 80% of our business disappeared during COVID, you know, so that's the same impact it had on our staff then as well.
Okay.
We also, similar to Swissport, we lost 75% of our pre-pandemic activity. We also lost permanent business as well. So the collapse of Flybe just before the pandemic in February 2020, some operations just pulled out of Dublin completely. There was obviously Stobart in 2021 as well. So we lost permanent business that wasn't potentially coming back after the pandemic. So there was an element of downsizing with that. But we retained a core group of staff. We retained them above wing. There was a 100%. And below wing, we retained a core group with key skills for us. But some individuals did take the opportunity to look at the industry and move us, because what we were happening is we were potentially opening, we were getting airline schedules coming in that looked quite strong, and then we were getting the cancellations because restrictions, whether they were in place at different jurisdictions around Europe as well. And it was very hard for us to give any certainty to our staff to say, okay, well, you know, in 2 or 3 months' time, we're essentially going to be back to pre-pandemic time. So individuals did make decisions, they did exit the business.
Okay. DA?
Well, when we were here the last time, our chief executive said, had we known then what we know now, we might have made different decisions, and I won't dispute that. I would say, however, that during the pandemic, there were many months in which we were operating with less passengers in the month than we might process during the 3 hours of the committee meeting today. And particularly in areas like security screening, when there's no passengers travelling, there is literally no work to be done. And the people that left our organisation left by means of voluntary redundancy, so nobody was required to leave the organisation.
Okay. Finally, the last point I want to make, Chairman, you mentioned the Defence Forces, and as a former member of the Defence Forces and one that was nominated to the Senate by the Defence Forces, amongst others, I take grave exception to the Defence Forces being requested to go in and dig ye out of a hole. I fully understand the needs of the public. I fully understand the needs of the airport to maintain itself, but to invite the Defence Forces in, and I know it wasn't ye, I know ye went to the Minister and the Minister asked his colleague Minister for Defence to provide the Defence Forces. I just think it's an insult to the Defence Forces. That's not what they're in this country for. That is not their role, and we should never let that happen again. But I've said it now. I've gotten it off my chest.
Mr. Harrison is informing us that he expects the Defence Force will not be required.
I sincerely hope they won't, but they should never have been asked. Anyway, Chairman, I'll leave it at that. Thank you
very much.